Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to continue working on my project by implementing a system that displays the currently held item, as well as creating unique item behaviors. These behaviors will be determined by what item is currently being held by the player. To get started, I created an empty game object to act as the anchor point for the held objects. Then I duplicated my resource objects and removed their colliders to make the display item game objects. Next, I created a variable to store the currently selected hotbar slot, along with a function that would detect when keys alpha 1 through 9 are pressed. This function sets the current hotbar slot equal to the number that is pressed if the slot is not empty. Then, I created a function to instantiate the display item game object at the position of the empty anchor game object. Because this empty game object is attached to the camera, I can set the Euler angles to be zeroed out and the object will face the same direction as the player. If the function cannot find a display item, it calls another function that destroys all the children belonging to the anchor game object. This function is also called right before instantiating the display object, just to make sure that there is only ever one child attached to the game object. This is just an extra safety precaution to prevent visual bugs, such as 2 or more items being displayed at the same time. Next, I wanted to create a function that will continue to display the items when items are dropped. Currently, when any item is dropped, the display object is destroyed and the selected hotbar slot is reset to -1. And by the way, -1 is the number I chose to be my null slot, as it works nicely with the lists, as the first object in a list is object 0. Anyways, I created a function called reDisplayItem that takes the current hotbar slot variable and checks to make sure an item occupies that slot on the actual hotbar. If an item is in the selected slot, it gets displayed. This might seem pretty simple and straightforward, but while I was working on this, I had to jump through a lot of hoops and worked a lot with trial and error. However, after I got everything plugged in where it needed to be, I was pretty happy with how the system turned out. My game is going to have a mining mechanic as one of the core gameplay loop elements, so to keep things moving, I booted up Maya to create a rough pickaxe model and just kind of figured out what I wanted to do. After about 40 minutes, this is what I came up with. The scale is definitely off and it isn't very visually appealing yet, but it'll work for now. I imported the mesh into my Unity project a few times, and after setting the rotation correctly, I began creating some very simple animations. For now, I created an idle animation and a swing animation. The swing animation plays when the left mouse button is pressed, and this is controlled using a simple function that just sets a boolean in the animator. Afterwards, the idle animation is played until another input. Next, I went to create a placeholder large stone model and imported it into my project. Then I created a function called apex swing, which is called through an animation event when the pickaxe reaches the apex of its swing animation. If the player is looking at the large stone game object when this function is called, then another function in a script attached to the large stone game object is called. I named this function damage resource, and all it does is subtract 1 from the resource health variable, and then it instantiates a piece of stone into the world for the player to collect. The health variable is just used to limit the number of times the player can harvest resources from the object. When the health variable reaches 0, the large stone game object is destroyed. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching and have a good day.